All right, so we're going to get started here. So, Bidderlyn, thanks for joining me today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Many people already know that you are one of the major map makers in Age of Empires 4. You've created maps for Red Bull, EGCTV. So today's focus is going to be a lot on maps, but doesn't have to be exclusively on maps. And before we get started talking about maps, did you want to discuss a little bit about your Age of Empires history / RTS background?
Yeah, so my history actually goes back to my dad. And my dad taught me to play RTS when I was very young. Like I was maybe it's kind of funny. I was like 3 years old, and I was just sitting on his lap, and he showed me how to play a game called Netstorm, and then sometime after a game called Age of Empires 1. And yeah, I was just watching him as a kid beating the medium AI, and was like, oh no, it's impossible to beat this medium AI. How does my father do that? And that's what got me really into playing and like being interested in Age of Empires. And you know, at some point, I managed to be better than my dad. Like after I was a teenager, and that made my dad quit. But you know, I'm trying to bring him back. So yeah, but yeah, that was my first introduction. And what I did when I was a kid, like I played Age of Empires 1 and I completely sucked. But then Age of Empires 2 came out, and I sucked a lot. But I could make my own maps. So I did that. I just made my own maps, and I gave myself tons of resources, and you know, and I gave the AI nothing, and I gave myself all the overpowered stuff I can dream of. And that was the key to starting like being in love with making my own stuff and in Age of Empires. And in time, I started, you know, enjoying balance more, and like I started enjoying being competitive more. And I started looking at maps from a more critic point of view, which kind of shaped who I am today. Like my first scenario that actually made it, I never intended them to make it. Like everything kind of just happened for me. So yeah, I guess we will get to that later. But yeah, that's how I started.
So it sounds like you jumped right into map creation in Age of Empires 2 and when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
What kind of got you into that?
Oh yeah, so I never actually, yeah, that's a good point. I never actually got to competitive play until very, very later on. Like I only discovered that there is a competitive scene for Age of Empires in 2016, I think. Until then, I simply did maps because I didn't know like what else I could do with the game, because I did the campaigns, I did play the skirmish maps, I managed to beat this medium AI, this impossible medium AI. I was like, okay, what's next? So the next stage for me was making maps and making my own content, because yeah, I just completed every content that there was in the game. So yeah, I started making my own, but I did it in a very, very amateur way, like just for fun. And actually, I still do it just for fun. It's kind of like it pans out well for me, but I'm still just trying to make more content for myself to enjoy, and like maybe like-minded people. So yeah, that's kind of what got me to do what I do now.
And so you played, the AI. You probably did the campaigns too, and then
Yeah,
and then
Mage too.
and then for more content, you started creating your maps.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until 2016 you started playing online against people.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was that I watched first. I watched like a tournament. I didn't know like Age of Empires 2 had big tournaments, and I discovered it by chance on YouTube. I think it was Hidden Cup. Anyway, it was a tournament in 2016, and I discovered like the Viper and MBL and all these players from Age of Empires 2. And I wanted to become like them, like, oh, I have new content to achieve. Yeah, so that's how I kind of started being more competitive, and I started approaching my map making with more competitive skill in mind. And I started making my own generated maps, because before that I only made custom maps. Sorry, English is hard. So yeah, and then I started making generated maps. And in Age 2, it's really easy to make generated maps compared to Age 4, which is maybe another topic. So yeah, I started making those. And in Age 2, basically, when you make a generated map, you're pretty much always fine, because no sieve breaks if you make an imbalanced resource. Like, for example, in Age 4, if you make a map with Stones of Deer, you know, it breaks the Rus gameplay. So yeah, it's a completely different approach, and like I love both approaches for so many different reasons. Like yeah. Like Age 4 maybe is more imbalanced, but when you make like too many resources of a kind, so it is a limiting factor. But there are so many creative ways to get around that, which I love. Like you can actually leverage that into something interesting rather than something limiting. So I think I love making maps for Age 4 more than I love making maps for Age 2, which is why I'm mainly doing Age 4 right now.
Why do you prefer or now
Yeah.
prefer making maps in Age of Empires 4 versus Age of Empires 2?
Yeah, I love that civilizations are more affected by what you put on the map. Like you can change the way the game plays. Like, I think like balance revolves around maps. Like they're completely integrated within each other. Uh, in Age of Empires 2, for example, it's still true, but you can make like any kind of map with any kind of resources, and all civilizations will be pretty much playing a similar way around this map. But in H4, you can say, okay, if this civilization is on this map, it plays completely different than this civilization. So you have to take so much more things to consideration when you make maps for H4. And I don't know, I think it's super interesting, like just as a thought experiment. And
Yeah,
it gives me a lot to do.
it's another level, right? You got another component. It's not just about the layout and
Yeah,
resources, but how that affects each of the civilizations in Age of Empires 4.
exactly.
And the civilizations are so different that you have to kind of, balance the civilizations, make sure it's fair, right? So, yeah.
Exactly.
And that's why it's nice to hear. And then also, too, when you said you were playing against the AI, you made the maps unfair. Well, now when you started opening them up to the competitive scene, you had to start thinking about actually making it fair
Yeah.
for everyone, not just
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, yeah. I made this transition between playing against the AI to playing actual people. I'm not that good, but I still, now I play against people. I find it more interesting than playing against the AI, which was what I did like a few years ago. Yeah, and I find it more interesting. It also gives him more things to think about because the AI plays a certain way, but players can do so many things like they're not expected, and trying to anticipate what a player will do with the map is so much harder than just making the map for myself. I know what I'm gonna do, or the AI, which I know what the AI is gonna do. So I find it much more interesting. I'm always looking for the next stage, like for the next interesting thought experiment to do with the maps. And yeah, it's been going great for me so far.
So now that's even another level that you just mentioned too. So not only you have the balance, you have the civilization, and then you have to think about, hey, how are players going to play the map too? So yeah, there's a lot
Yeah.
of layers to it, and I can see why, there's such an interest in map making.
It is, yeah. And it's so hard to anticipate the players. Like, I'm always getting kind of better on it, but Age of Empires 4 is kind of a new game. The meta shifts so much, which is, again, it's amazing. It's not a bad thing because when you make maps, like next patch, the map may be even better or even worse because something changed within the meta. And you have to kind of rebalance the maps. And I always go back to maps and I rebalance them because this tournament or this meta or something happens. And yeah, it's super interesting because it's the game. The Age of Empires 4 is very much like alive by the way. It changes, it grows. It's like it's a kid growing, and you have to buy new shoes for it. So that's how
Yeah.
you do with maps. You make new maps to fit his growth. So I,
Yep.
I really love that. Yeah.
And speaking of rebalance, here, let me switch the screen here, and let's actually talk about some of
Oh,
the maps that you rebalanced.
yeah, I did some.
So let me switch here. Yeah, so I know you've probably rebalanced a lot of maps in your time, but here was the two that you rebalanced for. I think it was Red Bull or Road to
Yeah.
Wallow, right?
Yeah, the road to Wallow. Yeah, exactly.
Hillendale and Lymphony. Did you want to talk a little bit about one of these maps at a time? Talk about the issues with the maps, and then how you went about solving the balance issues.
Right. Okay. So, first and foremost, I got to like make a disclaimer about these maps. I don't think like they definitely needed rebalance, but when you're talking about a tournament, professional players and professional organizers, they have some expectations about maps because maps on the ladder and maps on custom games, they can be somewhat more RNG and more imbalanced, and that's fun and that's fine. But when you're approaching a tournament, you have to be a little bit more conservative and a bit more fair when you make a map. You can't just like go crazy and do, okay, so maybe this player gets another goal. It doesn't happen. You can't have that. You have to make everything kind of count. So that's why we rebalanced them. I like rebalanced sounds like harsh, like the balance was not there, because it was actually there. I like to play Hill and, like, in my free time I will play the normal version of Hill and Dale and not my version of Hill and Dale. So but for a tournament, I completely understand why they need a different approach, you know. So yeah, and now let's talk about the actual changes. Let's see if I can actually remember them. So Lipany, I completely had to delete the script and write it again. And on Hill and Dale, I just made some minor tweaks. So yeah, I think Road to Ololo Lipany was my biggest project ever. It was even bigger than making my own map, because I had to, okay, I just loved the concept of Lipany, which is like semi-closed, semi-open map, but the generation was not consistent. And in a tournament, you want consistent generations. So yeah, and just playing around with the actual script, I had to, it's harder to edit script because you have to think what the scripter thought at the time. Like you have to get in their head. And I tried to do that for many days and I couldn't, I just couldn't. And I was like, okay, I will make my own Lipany and I will try to think about it, like what makes Lipany Lipany. And I sat down with Lord Patito and with some people, I don't know if they want to be named. So, and we started like brainstorming what makes Lipany Lipany, and how can we make it like tournament competitive, and like what is it? Yeah, and we came like with pages of bullet points and like crazy, like just ideas. And then I started working on it, and I started from scratch because I don't, I'm not like the same person who made the map originally, who's a great guy, by the way. So, and I just made a Lipany from scratch again, but with the same design and same concepts in mind, I hope. And it's now like more competitive for tournaments.
So I've played the beta tool, and it's hard for me
Yeah.
to understand, some of the script and stuff. I know if I played around with it, I'd be, able to understand it.
Yeah, I think it's not that complicated once you mess around with it. And you do need some coding experience to understand it to a deeper level, but everyone can make a very basic map with just some basic knowledge about how games work, basically. Like no coding required.
Yep.
And yeah, so if you just mess around with it and you go into the modding community, it's an amazing community. People will help you. There are super nice people there. And I thoroughly recommend everyone to try out the tools because we need more mappers, you know?
So now getting back to Lymphony. So you said you started from scratch on Lymphony to rebalance it. And then some of the issues, if I remember correctly, was the random generation, right? Because sometimes there would be like these huge cliffs that would split the team players, or there would be like maybe a small opening that could be easily walled, and maybe some resources or relics that weren't evenly distributed. Those were the issues that you kind of had to rebalance, correct?
Exactly those. And again, like the generation was just not consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And for a tournament, you want consistency because you want players to practice for something. And it's not generally better or worse. It's just what it is. Tournaments need more consistency. The maps need to be in a certain theme. They need to have a certain concept.
Yep.
And yeah, you don't want a generation that is too random.
But you kept it's still a berry heavy map, right? It has all the berries on it. Is it one extra or is it two extra berries?
Two extra, so five berries for each player. That's the distribution on 1v1.
And then the mountains too, right? Kind of like they're smaller, I believe, on the rebalance, correct?
Yes, they are smaller. They do differ in shape, but we did like there are certain really cool script things that are going on, because what happens is the cliff that generates closer to you, it will always face towards your enemy, which is important because if it faces towards you, it can be a staging point against your town center. So there are like a lot of details which people like not realize, but it was like kind of hard to script. But there are a lot of just small stuff that we had to kind of consider.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm super happy with how it came out. Like it's maybe my proudest project, I think.
It's one of my favorite maps. It's right up there with Dry Arabia. I love Lymphony and I love Dry Arabia. And that's probably because I do love Abbasid and I enjoy, Delhi and now Ottoman. So I kind of like those. And Ottomans, they don't really get the berry bonus that Abbasid and Delhi get, but, they're good against those civs. So it's kind of like it's just a nice map.
I love Abbasid also, which is also why I love this map. By the way, can I go for a second to show you something?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, hold on. I love Abbasid so much, I took it from the Red Bull.
Oh, nice.
From the tournament. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I hang it on my door. It's really nice.
Let's see. I don't want to get up and grab it, but yeah, like, did you get the what's the handbook for Age of Empires 4 when it came out?
Oh, the handbook? I actually didn't get it.
Oh, you didn't get it?
I could got it. It was on the table, but I forgot to take it. There was like a huge book with all the developer notes.
Yeah, companion book, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of too big for me to take because I had to fly back and I had only like a backpack. So I didn't get it.
But because I saw when they were releasing Age of Empires that they were kind of putting that as a giveaway, and I'm like, I'm not going to get it as a giveaway, so I went and bought it. And because I'm not sure about you, like, with the Age of Empires 4, for me it was Age of Empires 3. When you bought the game, you got that thick packet, and you don't get that with games anymore. I love just like, looking at the units, looking at different aspects, and the Age of Empires 4, which is a massive book, is like that on steroids.
Yeah, and they gave it away on Red Bull. Like I wanted to get it, but I just didn't have the luggage space. I don't know if they probably sold it, not gave it away. Like I would buy it, I wouldn't just.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. I love those stuff. Like I like to get extra nerdy about games. So yeah, I love these books. I think I have it for a few games, like on my closet over there.
Mm-hmm.
I love those stuff. It kind of takes up all my space, but it's worth it. So.
Yeah, definitely. And then also the companion book, it came with some pictures, and that's what I was going to show. Was I have an Abbasid one? It's a camel rider, so it's pretty nice.
Yeah. I think that those are used as wallpapers. I had them as wallpapers for a while. So
yeah. I'm a complete nerd with Age of Empires stuff. I just love the game. Anyway, it's just kind of getting back on there. I just love in general talking about Age of Empires. So sorry for the segue there. But let's talk a little bit about Hillendale.
Yeah. So on Hillendale, I think mostly the issue was that the sacred sites and the woodlands tended to spawn towards a certain player. Like one player had extra goals or extra wood, or the wood completely blocked the entrance from one side. So we basically just did some tuning to make sure that does not happen for the tournament.
Yep.
And I think that was it. It was actually relatively easy compared to Lipany,
yeah.
But it was just a couple of things. Like we didn't completely overhaul it. It's the same scripts the original creator made. It's just with a few tweaks. I think Hillendale is. I know it gets a lot of hate, but I like this one. So
I like it too. I don't mind it. In the beginning it was a little. I don't know why. Maybe I just wasn't as good, but I still feel like I could rush. I'm an aggressive player, so I can still just where the openings are and just run over. Because it is kind of hard to wall up. You got the sides which are easy, but the opening I feel is bigger.
It is bigger. Yeah,
okay,
it is bigger.
So it's not as easy to wall up quickly.
Yeah, it used to be very, very narrow, but it got bigger. And I think actually rushing on this map, like because it's not expected, it's actually kind of a surprise tactic you can pull off. And I mean, people say you can just wall and win, but I think you have to take map control because most of the good stuff is in the middle. All the relics, the sacred sites, most of the gold and stone is in the middle. So you have to go aggressive to grab that. So I love the design of this map, and I don't agree with the bad reputation it has, but it's me, it's just me. And obviously, everyone has their own preference and their own play style, so it's fine.
And maybe that's just like the old Hillendale, now that it's been a little bit reworked, maybe it's a little bit more favorable. Same with Lymphony, I think people will enjoy Lymphony. At least I do anyways.
Yeah, I think so too. I hope, I make them in and just hoping it's fine for people to play, but like the thing is, I think like it doesn't always work as you expect, and people sometimes find a loophole in the map or a way to play it differently than you expected, and that's fine as well. It's like the map is it evolves. It's not what it was just when it was created. So those rebalanced maps, like just the same way I did it for Relic, I did it for my other maps. Like a lot of my maps, if they were going to be used in a tournament, I would rebalance them before I would tell them. Like I think maybe half my maps, if you tell me tomorrow that you want one of my maps for a tournament, I will tell you, no, don't do it. Wait, I will make a tournament version of this map, because I don't make maps with tournament and competitiveness in mind. I just think about a cool concept or a cool design. And if they are needed for a tournament, I rebalance those maps. So it's something that happens for every map.
That makes sense, yeah. So you just create a cool map, and then if people are interested in doing it for a tournament, then you'll just go ahead and rebalance it. That makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, basically. And I might make the map with a tournament concept in mind, but I mostly like to play with concepts. And then, if people think those concepts are interesting, I will keep, I will make another edit for the map to make it viable for tournament. And I don't think every map should be viable for tournament. Like some maps shouldn't be. It's not like the golden standard of map. Like going into a tournament is not what you have to do to make a good map, because some maps are casual maps, like Mountain Pass, for example. I wouldn't put it in a tournament, but it's a super fun map for like beginners, who want to just have fun, learn how to boom. Every map has its concept and design, which is completely like, if it has a target and it reaches that target, then the map is good.
I feel like we have the same taste in maps, because I love Mountain Pass too. And I don't like playing 45-minute games, so I'm going in right away. I'm making the wall that goes the opposite way of the mountain, so that way they can't wall it up, so I can rush them. So I feel like you could still be aggressive on that map. But yeah, if you're gonna play, Boom Civ, yeah, they're gonna have, each player is gonna do the stone walls, and then you're gonna have that hour-long game where people creep up. So I think part of it is just, what you said earlier is, how do people play the map? Because how you play the map is going to kind of change, the way the map is, played, and how the game plays out.
Exactly. And I try to watch as much tournaments and as much casual plays as possible to get like all the spectrum of how people play a map. And I try to accommodate to casual players as much as I try to accommodate for professional players, because I am a casual player. I want to care for my people, not only for the tournaments. And it is interesting, as you say. And I think we do have the same taste. It's nice.
And that's good to hear. I think for a lot of people, it's not just you're building maps for the top 1%. You have a wide range that you're providing maps to. So let's move on to here to Road to Wololo. So this is, EGC TV, finding qualifiers for the tournament. And these were some of the maps that were on there that you created. Now, I think you told me before we started the podcast that Lakeside didn't happen.
No,
so
it didn't make it.
So we'll discuss that one at the end, because I'm curious why it didn't make it. But before we get into that, let's discuss a little about Four Lakes and Kawasan.
Both of these maps are maps that we brought from Age of Empires 2. Okay. Four Lakes, I made it together with Fano, I believe. Yeah, it was Fano. And Kawasan, I think I made it on my own. And actually, Kawasan was kind of an interesting project, and Four Lakes was as well, but both were for completely different reasons. I will start with Kawasan, I think. So what's interesting about Kawasan is that I made it just casually, and my first iteration of this map was players could spawn somewhere like on the top and on the bottom. But what happened is sometimes one player had, like if one player spawned at the middle and another spawned at a corner, the player on the middle basically had an extra pond access. So what we did,
Oh, because of the two right here, right? Versus if you're in the
yeah,
corner, you just got the one. Yep, that makes sense.
exactly. So what we did like asymmetrical spawn. So they always spawn mirrored to each other. But then we actually revisited this idea again, and we made them either mirrored or flipped, because you don't want people to always be mirrored,
Yep.
because then it's what's the point about scouting, right? You don't want to know where your enemy is every time.
Yep.
So we had like both approaches happening, and it's kind of random, and I think like it's a really fun and neat idea. Yeah, and by the way, like all these ideas, I'm super fortunate because I don't just come with it alone. It's why I say we all the time, because I'm part of a team, and like there are a lot of people just giving me advice, and people criticizing me like for good or for worse, and it's fine, and people just brainstorming. And I think I wouldn't keep going as much as I did if I didn't have all this help and all this like support from the models, from the community, from the developers. So yeah, I've been super fortunate, and yeah, all these maps I cannot just. I know it says Bidderlyn on top, but like if I could just type like everyone, it would be awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bidderlyn and everyone. Yeah. So Kawasan, I think that the idea to make it mirrored or flipped, it came from someone from within EGC. Like I don't know, just someone just suggested this is the way we should spawn it, and I was like, yes, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I started like scripting it. Yeah, like at the beginning, I just thought of myself as a scripter. Like my ideas didn't really make it, but as I kind of grew along with making maps, I made more original ideas, which didn't always work. Like I'm happy to say I made more bad maps than anyone else. Like there is no one who made more more bad maps than I did, but I also made like a lot of good maps, and that's fine. Without those bad maps, I would never made all the good maps, because each time I made a bad map, I don't think they were necessarily bad, but I mean by bad I mean not as accepted, which we will talk about like a Lakeside. Each time I did that, I learned so much, because what makes a map good or bad? So you can have like 5 good ideas and 1 bad idea, and it will spoil the soup, you know?
Yeah.
Because if you have 1 bad thing and like, I don't know, 10 amazing things, the 1 bad things will always pop out. So when you go crazy with a concept, there is a much bigger chance to mess it up. But then you kind of you learn like, why does this concept, like, is the concept bad, or does it just not work on this map? And yeah, and like every map, even the bad ones, like Lakeside, which I don't think it's a bad map, but you know, its reputation, like it did not get accepted. Let's just say it like that. But I did learn like, what are people looking for in a competitive game because of this map. Like the next maps I did were super accepted. Like they were people just embraced them so much better, because I took a lot from making this one. Yeah, I'm talking a lot. So
No, this is perfect. So when you were talking about, you know, kind of correcting some of your mistakes from Four Lakes, were you talking about changing the
from Lakeside? Yeah.
Or Lakeside. Oh, you were talking about Lakeside. Oh, okay. Sorry, I was on Four Lakes.
Four Lakes. By the way, Four Lakes was also not so very well accepted. Like it got popular after people played it, but before it got played, I think they wanted to remove it, which is, maybe I said Four Lakes, but it was by mistake. But Four Lakes was not accepted.
I think it was me.
Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, Four Lakes, it's actually interesting. It almost did not get accepted, but and I thought like, okay, so like people have their reasons, it's fine, like they're right. But then they started playing it, and I think it's one of the more accepted maps at the moment, which is kind of funny, because like I can talk about all the issues we faced when we released this map. Like there was the walling issue; it was too easy to wall your lake, and people thought like it's too messy, and like people had a lot of like I don't know, like red flags about this map, because it wasn't actually played, but after it was played for a few times, people kind of developed an interesting meta, which I did not expect on it, and also the meta changed as the map was played more. So like walling with roofs like now is so much harder than it was before, and I think it made this map so much better, because before this update, you could wall the lakes with roofs so much easier, and now you can't, and it's like a very interesting risk-reward mechanism because Rus is so powerful on this map, and suddenly that like they can't wall their lake, so not efficiently anyway. So
And that's because
yeah,
they take that's because they take more time to build, correct? Is that the change that you're referring to?
exactly. It now takes 7 seconds to build like a segment of a wall instead of 3 seconds, so it's
Yeah.
over twice.
Yep.
So people don't wall their lake anymore as much as they used to with Rus, and it's good because this is the one sieve which needed a nerf on this map. So I think the meta kind of developed in favor of this map because I was about to toss it aside, but then this meta developed, and we were like, oh, that's perfect for us. And it wasn't anything we've done. It's just the meta evolved in favor of this map.
Yep.
So yeah, sometimes you just get lucky, and like if Rus walls became better, this map would have to be deleted. Like I would have to radically change it or delete it. I wouldn't use it for a tournament anyway. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that how the meta, as we said before, like the meta shapes the map.
Now, when you're building these maps, and you kind of have an idea maybe how players are gonna play it, do players kind of match your idea of how they're gonna play it, or do they kind of just create something new that you weren't even expecting?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like sometimes they do exactly what I expect, and sometimes it takes them a few days or a few weeks until they actually realize they should do what I planned for them to do. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly it. Like, and on let's say on Golden Heights for Red Bull,
Mm-hmm.
I was like everyone said that the bottom side will be super easy to wall. Yeah, exactly. Actually, you know what? I will help you. It's this one, you know? Yeah.
Oh, you got that one too. Oh, is it not this one?
Oh, yeah, I have all of them.
Oh,
From
nice.
the Red Bull.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you deserve them.
Yeah,
You know,
it is,
you.
it is. I'm so fortunate to have those. Like, I hang them around the house.
Yeah.
It's my banners, you know, it's my stuff. Anyway,
My
so on gold. Oh, no, I put, well, hold on, I took gold, but I have gold in my. There we go.
My wife would
Anyway.
make sure that they stay in my office. I wouldn't be able to put them in other parts of the house.
Yeah, I'm going to build the office. By the way, this is completely like my mess hall. It's the living room.
Yeah.
But I'm going to build an office soon, hopefully, and yeah, I'll have a better setup around.
That's awesome,
I'm
though.
not streaming, so I don't need a setup. But I
Yep.
might. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So on Golden Heights, like all the pro players, when they just got introduced to this map, they were thinking they can easily wall this bottom side and the map will drag on for hours.
Right here,
And I
right?
was like, no, the bottom side is going to be a death valley. I'm like completely certain. And I was completely certain. And everyone told me I'm wrong, but like the meta developed, so they realized like after a few days, maybe some of them realized right away, I don't know, and they just kept it as a secret because they didn't want to reveal the strategy. But they realized like maybe pretty quickly that then the bottom side is actually a death valley. And what I intended for it to be when I made this map is that people will make towers on the top side and kind of control the bottom side with these towers or with these keeps. And it kind of never actually happened, kind of. Maybe some people attempted it. But yeah, it happened so much less than I anticipated. So yeah, I know the meta was kind of strange on this map. Like people went docking right away, which was expected, but they never utilized this height advantage over the valley, except I think Mista. I think Mista was maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was Kasva though. Someone began to utilize this top side. So yeah, I found it kind of interesting, like how this meta developed on this map, and on every map, players kind of develop the meta in a way I don't always anticipate, and I don't like sometimes I have to actually make adjustments to the map. So if we go back to Four Lakes, I played around with this map so many times. I think I updated this map maybe 9 times, because each time I would slightly tweak like the lake size, and maybe I would slightly tweak where the wood spawns, because players kind of found exploits like the map came out when Tower Rush was really, really strong. So we had to make the woods kind of more separated from each other. Otherwise, the Tower Rush would completely annihilate a player. And yeah, like players always like find the loophole in your map. They will always do, like if it's a professional player. So you always have to kind of balance the map around these loopholes and try to find a balanced approach, which is in the middle of all these loopholes, which is something that it's super hard to do. It's always the fine detail. So yeah.
And when you were talking about the dead zone, were you talking the side with the pond? Or what was the dead zone that you were talking about?
Oh, the death zone was actually the side between the players, the close, like the bottom side where the sacred site on the corner is. So that's the death zone. That's where the players actually destroyed each other. And players,
Oh, I get it.
yeah.
Dead zone by
And
killing each other, not dead zone of people aren't going to go there type of thing.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
got
Exactly. It was the zone of the
Yep.
valley of death. It was where all the battles occurred, like all the big battles anyway, most of the time. And yeah, and players thought it's completely wallable and you can just relax and not worry about this side, but
Yep.
not at all. And yeah, it was not at all the case. I don't think any game had ended without any battles going through this corridor. So
There was quite the variety because, like, yeah, you had this dead zone. There was some fights, but there were some walls here. But then you had this sacred site here on this hill. You know, this was kind of like the short path. But then in the beginning, you kind of had these small battles. You know, controlling, building the docks, and you had some small skirmishes there. So it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, it was, and that was the intention. The intention was players have to worry about everything all the time. That's like what
Yep.
I hoped would happen. And yeah, like obviously in the Dark Age, you have to go and make a dock because you can't without it. But another thing I've done on this map is I did not want the dock to be too powerful. So if you lose the water on this map, it's not the end of the world because there are also only 3 fish in this lake. And going to make the dock will also require a lot of travel time for the villagers and a lot of investment. So if you win water on this map, you did not necessarily win the game. Unlike like if you take all the 4 lakes on 4 lakes, you win the game. Like it's in the name of the map, Or if you take the water in Mediterranean, you win the game. But not on this one. Yeah, I can talk a lot about like all the details we put in. Like for example, on this map, we took another approach to wood lines. So the wood lines are just out of the range of your TC. So the wood lines, actually the 2 wood lines, this is the first generation of this map, but in the later generations, there are 2 wood lines near the town center, one on the back, one where you see near the cliff.
Okay, right, like right here, this one.
Yeah, exactly. And they are just outside the range of the TC, so it cannot actually protect your wood villagers, but we added another small wood line that is within range of the TC. So the TC can only protect a limited amount of wood, and then you have to kind of go to these other outer wood lines, which are closed, but they can be raided. And I know like players really like this approach. Like at least that's what they said. Like so we think about like importing or exporting. I don't know. Yeah, this approach to more maps in the future because I think it is an interesting approach to wood. Like you have 1 safe wood, but it's small, and 2 semi-safe, but not actually safe woods near you. And yeah, I actually, it was an experiment and it panned out really well. And it's like all these small details are what makes maps. And like you have to think about every detail a million times if you make it for a tournament as big as Red Bull.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, and making. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And King of the Hill and the Pit would be another like 2 more examples of that, right? Where they have the small wood line, and then they have the major wood line just outside the range of the town center.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. Yeah, but the wood lines are completely different than the Pit because it's
they're round versus straight, but yeah, just the concept of within TC range, it would be the small wood line. And I want to kind of touch more on water balance. You kind of touched in a little bit about it here, where one way you balanced water was having less fish in it, and that's a great point. Is there any other ways that you go to balance water in a way where if you lose water, you don't lose the game, or is it just having is it just controlling the amount of fish in the pond?
That's a great question. So yeah, I think so. Like I think if you let's take I want to use example like. In Kawasan, you have to take water in the beginning, but the way you take the water is always like just land aggression, like spearman aggression, or maybe Englishman at arm aggression. So while basically, if you took water on Kawasan or if you took water on any of these maps, it means you also had better land aggression. But in some other maps, like Mediterranean, for example, you cannot take water without using water aggression. Like you cannot win Mediterranean with just Spearman Rush because going all the way through the circle is just too much for land aggression to be effective. And I think like we are trying more and more approaches to water balance. Like I know Avely, which is one of the map makers from the community, he made a map for the winter team championship tournament, which is called Midgard or Coastal.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, and the way he made this map is there is a ring of water around the map, which is the map is similar to Dry Arabia, slightly different in how the resources distribute. And the way is like in the corners, you can fish and you can there are a lot of fishes in the corners, but in the lines, like the edges, there is a very, very thin layer. So you can actually protect water with towers. Like if you put a tower on the land near the water, you can protect water with tower. So it's kind of a different approach to how you engage with the water. And ships cannot just trade you without taking shots from these towers. And I think it's really cool. So yeah, we are figuring out more and more approaches to how to handle water with map balancing because yeah, I think it's interesting. It's a very interesting experiment to make. And more and more models think about more and more ways to approach it.
And I think that's one of the biggest issues today, right? Or is just trying to discover a way where if you do lose water, it's not just a GG.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, sadly, it is kind of that, right? Like if you lose water and the water is important, like it has a lot of fish, it is kind of a GG. But the question is, do you have a comeback mechanic? And I think like in 4 lakes, if you lose a pond, you have the next pond. But if you lose that next pond, you are dead, right? Like you can't keep losing ponds. So it's fine. I think there should be like a line where, okay, you lost water everywhere, you should lose. Like at this point, it's okay. It is GG and it's fair. But in some apps, like for example, why Lakeside was not so popular, I see it on the screen right now. It's because if you lost, actually no, this Lakeside, I think there were only 2 big fish on this map. Yeah, so if you lost water on this one, you were kind of screwed. And I think it's why people didn't like it. But I actually think I kind of like the ideas I played with in this map. And even though it didn't make it to the competitive scene, I think, next time I made a water map, I made the water a little bit more dispersed and a little bit like you have to compete on a different level to actually take it. So, yeah.
So that was the big issue with Lakeside. It was where if you lost water, it was GG. Or what was the issues with Lakeside?
Yeah, there were several actually. Like I think the biggest issue was distribution, which I had back then. The community tools were not as good as they are now, and you could not control a lot of resources. Like the resources around the TC, you could not control them. And a lot of time, like you had maybe your gold just next to the water and your deer were kind of just next to the water. And if you lost water, you also lost the gold and the deer, it's a problem. And I could not control it. And I think that's what made the pros really dislike it. I know like a lot of casual players love this map. I also kind of love this map, right? But it's not a fair map. And I might revisit it now that I have the tools to actually revisit it.
Mm-hmm.
And and like a lot of issues like that happened. Also the fish, sometimes the fish kind of spawned within your TC range, so you could protect your own fish, which was kind of bullshit. Yeah, but I mean, it had a lot of spawn issues. I think the idea is interesting. It was a little bit too wallable. Like I do realize all the issues with this map for competitive play. I did not make it for competitive play. Like EGC came after me and asked like, can we use this map? I was like, yeah, sure.
Okay.
And maybe I should have just told them, wait, maybe it's not competitive enough. But I did want to see the pros play on it, and I still do, by the way.
Now, are these?
I might be devious and try to give it a comeback in one of these days. So we shall see.
Are these maps can they all be found in game or just by searching through the mods or?
Yeah, I think every single map is you can find it. I think Lakeside may be broken right now because a few updates happened and they did not update it, so it might not work by now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like all other maps, especially the maps you see in tournaments, they are available for the community. And I do encourage everyone to check not only these maps, like check the models maps out because the community does great things and there are so many interesting ideas and just hearing feedback from the community about what works, what doesn't work, makes the maps even better for the future. So yeah, go ahead and check them out.
And let's go over here to now we for the Red
Yeah.
Bull tournament. We did talk about Golden Heights in depth,
Yeah.
but you want to talk about a little bit about Gorge? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, gold. Yeah.
So what about how'd you go about getting the idea for this? How'd you go about building it, and then a little bit about the balance?
Okay. Okay, yeah, I'll make a confession about Gorge. Like the way I approached it on the first time, I was thinking like, how can I? Because what I think they asked me to make the pits rebalanced. That's what they wanted, right? Like the Lipany. But I was like, it's too tricky. Like because they asked me two things. They wanted aggressive map
Yep.
and they wanted to rebalance the pit, and I tried to kind of combine it. And yeah, and then I came up with the idea, which is this, the gorge, which is not anything like the pit in the end, but yeah, you can kind of see the
Yeah.
inspiration, I guess,
Yep.
right? But yeah, but the gameplay is completely different. I made the center completely clear, so people just charge head on into one another right off the bat, and you can take the high ground to maybe make towers like on the spot. Yeah, I think that's what. So what I tried to think, I was trying to think. I didn't try to copy the pit, but I was trying to think what the pit. What were the ideas behind the pit that I could borrow and make them more aggressive? So that's how I engaged with making this map. And yeah, I'm really happy with how it came out. Like considering like Red Bull didn't give me almost any limitations. They just had like kind of ideas, and they kind of gave me complete trust, which was amazing. I never expected like this massive production to put so much trust in my work.
Yep.
And yeah, I just hope I managed to deliver. So yeah, I'm happy about what came out. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun map to watch too. I think one of the big ones was I'm trying to think. It was a Beastie Marine Lord, I believe, played on this map, and it was a Mongols versus. Do you remember which one for the Red Bull?
Ooh, I'm trying to remember.
No, it was Ottomans, right? It wasn't Ottomans versus Mongols, I
Yeah,
believe.
I've watched all the games, but like I'm trying to remember.
I feel like it was Ottomans versus Mongols, and it was just fun to see how Marine Lord
Yeah,
played
yeah, yeah,
against
you're
it on
right.
this new map, new civ. That whole
Mhm.
complexity there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do remember that much. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Before
And
we
yeah,
move on to the Winter Championship, do you have anything else that you want to discuss on the Red Bull maps that you created?
maybe not, but the actual event was amazing, and I got to meet so many people. I mean, I just talked to by Discord or by other means until now, and yeah, and like I was sitting with all my favorite players and favorite like map makers, and I could experience them
Yep.
firsthand, and it was amazing.
Were you guys brainstorming maps at the tournament?
We did. It was, we went into a pub and like a bunch of nerds and brainstormed maps. It was awesome.
That's where ideas flow, right? Is a pub, right?
Exactly. Oh yeah, I know what's the next projection you're going to put up. So it was actually we I think it came up. Yeah, this one. So yeah, we might have been drunk when we came up with this one.
Nice. I mean, it's pretty crazy. When you told me about it and I went and looked at it, I'm like, oh wow, this is some interesting play style. I hope we see it. I hope we see it in Winter Team Championship because I could see
Yeah,
people banning it. Just because it's so
definitely.
unique.
Definitely. People do not like professional players not don't always like unique maps because it kind of throws them off. They want to play what they know they are good at, and it doesn't like a lot of times I hear people like been upset by, oh, my map has been banned and whatever. Like because we do bring a lot of people. Like we try to get the community involved as much as possible, but I don't think they should take it like in a bad way, because people will ban what they are afraid of and what
Yeah.
they don't feel confident in, rather than what is like, it's not, it doesn't say anything about the quality of the map. So yeah, it's fine, it's fine.
And Bidderlyn, and correct me if I'm wrong. I just wanted to set this up for the audience here.
Yeah.
So this is a 3v3 map. You know, there's a 2v2 version as well. But
Yeah.
a team start on. So this would be, you know, a team, you know, team player one, or team one player one, team one player two, team one player three, and then
Yeah.
the other team starts on this side. Correct?
Yeah. Correct, exactly correct. So it's basically, if you play 3v3, it should be 3 1v1s, and yeah, I don't know if the 4v4 version works. I actually didn't test it, but it's basically just the same script, so it should scale up to any amount. But yeah, it probably has some hiccups. But yeah, it works for 2v2 and 3v3, and the idea is it's 1v1v1, and I actually think the pro levels will not ban it, even though it's unique, because I think pro players will love the idea of playing 1v1 in a team tournament, because you know many of these pros, they play 1v1 like regularly, so they want to kind of bring out what they're used to into the team tournament, which is this map. But there are there are neat strats and like unique strats you can make it to make it less 1v1. Like one can maybe think about a way to get involved early with his teammate and try to do something crazy. No, I am not trying to reveal strats, but it's
Hey,
possible.
if you want to discuss, I mean, I'm gonna add my own strats if you're not gonna fill in any.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you brought a good point there. You know, I feel like this map, just from straight looking at it, since it's, you know, 1v1 favored, if like those strong players that are strong in 1v1, so I'm thinking like BCQT, Marine Lord to Muslim, this might be a map that's really fits them well, because they're all three are very competent players. So I mean, they could potentially win, you know, each one, but I think teams that maybe have, you know, like a Luciferon, Vortex, and Mista, you know, or any brothers, right? Puppy Paw, Wham, you know, there's a little chemistry there where maybe this map might not be ideal, because, you know, they don't get to use that teamwork right away. You know, they have to fight a 1v1 first, you know, maybe survive before that team play, you know. So this kind of rewards a little bit of individual play versus team play. But I do see some strats where, you know, hey, you try to cut this player right here cuts through this side, and this player cuts through this side, and they try to open it up so that way it can become like a, you know, a 2v1 or something like that. And that's the scary thing. If, would say, a player here, they win their side, well, now they're going to be chopping through, you know, through to help their opponent.
Yeah. You know, when I made this map, I had like these dream scenarios of like two different teams winning different fronts, and you know, it's like a world war kind of type of, you know, you win here, I win here.
Yep.
But obviously, it's gonna pan out a little bit differently. Like players will kind of combine at some stage, and it will become like, I think the map becomes more and more standard the longer the game gets, because I think the chop through gets established sometime between the feudal to the castle age, like normally, but you can kind of rush it or go slow about it. So yeah, I think it's not a question of whether the chop through will happen, because it will. It's like, what's the timing you are aiming for?
Yep.
And yeah, it's an interesting question, and I guess the pros will find out better than I can.
You know what's kind of interesting too, I guess, like even if like, let's say yellow and this blue color, you know, they chop through, well, now you open up, you know, for the opponent to get through too. You know, it's kind of through their town center area, but I mean, now, you know, it doesn't necessarily become a 2v1. Now it could potentially become a 2v2 situation. You know,
right? And you might think like you could chop through, and you might think, oh yeah, I made the 2v1, but the other guys also chopped through at the same time.
Oh yeah, and that too. Yeah,
you attack from this angle, and they attack from that, and it's kind of like it can make for a funny situation. Yeah, I can definitely see funny games happening on this map. Like also just completely meta games of 1v1v1, and like everyone just bashing through. And I think it's going to be fun to see this map plays differently every time, or maybe players will just establish one way to play this map, and like I can't wait to see what players do with this map, because I think this one is definitely different. So yeah, let's wait.
Do you
And
think?
again, we were drunk when we came up with this idea. So
I think
just
I'm excited for it when I saw it. I'm like, oh wow, I hope to see this. I'm really curious to see what people come up with. Do you think people will use this backwood much? Maybe just in the beginning, and then transition over to the main
they
one.
kind of have to in the beginning,
Yep.
because it's kind of safe, and you don't want to send your villager all the way out and maybe get harassed. So I think just doing both is something that's going to happen most of the time. But I can definitely see people skipping the backwood and just let's go chop, and it might happen.
Now, is there any trade on this map or no?
Yeah, there is, because you can make your trades and the teammate can make his trade. So we didn't.
Between players, right?
Yeah, you have
I
to
forgot
chop,
about that.
But, that's part of the point.
Yep. So once you chop it, you can set up trade. Now, do you think there's a chance where they'll just create this wall around here and then becomes like an hour game, or do you think this will be a quick game?
Any map, even Dry Arabia, can be walled and be 1 hour game. Yeah, it happens. And we are limited with this square structure. Like, we have to work with what we got. I cannot expand this. I cannot make walls more expensive.
Yep.
So I can just, I mean, I can't even make areas which cannot be walled, right? So this can happen in any map, but I think it won't happen as much, because even if you wall just straight off the bat in this game, the thing is, I think maps with wood, and maybe it's something controversial I'm saying, but the more wood you have, the more I don't know, impasses with wood, the harder it is to wall, because people can just chop the wood and get around your wall. So I think this map is actually harder to wall than Arabia. That's my opinion. Maybe it's controversial, but yeah, I think establishing good walls is harder here, because you always have to take care that people don't chop over. Yeah. But obviously it can be walled.
Do you know how long it would take for an opponent to, for them to chop through the woods? Is it the 15-minute mark? Do you think it's at the 20?
Yeah, exactly, 15 minutes.
You think about 15 minutes?
12 to 15, that's the normal time.
That seems about like the perfect amount of time, too. It's not too late in the game. It's not 45 minutes in where you finally break through. 15 minutes is kind of like when, maybe opponents are starting to hit age 3 or building that army.
That's the idea. I picked the thickness around I wanted them to be around Castle Age, approaching Castle Age.
Yep.
That's why I picked this amount of thickness in the woods. Yeah.
And how did you go about testing that? Did you just do it yourself, or do you have tools that will, hey, if you have this thickness of woods, it takes this long to chop through?
And by now I kind of have it's kind of an intuition.
Yep.
But I do I look at the map obviously, and I try to do it just to check how fast I can do it against the AI. I kind of test it. And by the way, this was not so when I made this map the first time, the wood was only thick around the player, but around the middle it was a thin wood. I had everything kind of big around the player, and towards the middle it was thinner and thinner. So the farther you go, the easier it would be to chop. Yeah, but I didn't go with it by then. It's interesting, right? I decided against it because I don't know. In the middle it was just a three wood thin in the very middle.
That's interesting, though. That would be kind of cool. I mean, both are cool, but that's just kind of cool. Your iterations through the map. I could kind of see that.
Yeah, exactly. But I decided against it because I don't know. I was kind of afraid of too many meme strats happening, and I couldn't because it's a by the way, if I was doing this for costume games, not a tournament, I would go with this first idea. But because it's a tournament, you have to be a little bit more conservative about how you do stuff. So that's what I'm talking about. You have to approach things there is no such thing as a good map and a bad map, in my opinion. Obviously, some can be said they're objectively this or that, but it depends on the situation. So for a tournament, I didn't go for this crazy wood line that gets thinner.
Yeah.
It's a tournament, but if I was making it for a costume game, I would make it. So yeah, the map has to fit the scenario you put it for. It cannot just be whatever you like. So yeah.
Yeah, and you have to think about the rank game, but now that you think about that, I'm like, oh man, that's That's even cooler, the thinner wall, because that's even it's like a another level of this complex map. Is hey, do
Yeah,
you
yeah. That's what it was in the beginning. So I might reverse it if you really like it. Like if the players, I don't know, if someone hears this podcast and thinks it's a good idea, I don't know. Like I think for the competition it might be a little problematic, but I definitely want to try it out, like custom games. Maybe later I will change it around. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, then it kind of like, like just when you say that, like, okay, well, would players then put a town center near the center,
Exactly. That's
or
what I was afraid of.
but then if you do that and you chop through, well, now you have a very vulnerable town center from not only your opponent on this side, but then your
That's a good
opponent on this
point.
side then could take down that town center,
That's
and I don't
also
think
a
an
good point.
outpost, and then there you want like, oh,
Exactly. It's like a bunch of variables I have to kind of consider,
yeah,
and yeah, I couldn't decide if it's a good idea or not. Like I love the idea, but I couldn't decide if it's a tournament good idea.
yeah.
That's the thing. Like where the map exists, because the map exists in a tournament. It doesn't exist just in my head. So I have to think like, can it be exploited? And like the answer I gave myself was I don't know. Like, and because I don't know, I don't want to risk it. So
And,
yeah.
and I guess you're hitting that 15. I'm just brainstorming because this is cool
Yeah,
to me.
go ahead.
Is if
I
you
love this. This is what I do. Like, this is basically my job. So yeah.
if you did have
like my yeah, what I love to do, my passion. Yeah.
if you did have a thinner wall here, maybe they would want to get to age 3, so that way could they build a stone wall, like maybe just past the thin wall, so then you break through.
Yeah,
So then it'd become a 2v1. Maybe that's where people could exploit it. Maybe that would be the downside, of it.
Yeah, that could be. It's a good. Yeah,
It's
you
a
have
cool
good
map. It's
suggestions.
a cool. I mean, it's not a suggestion. I'm just. I like it either way. I'm just like when I see this
I'm
stuff.
excited to see it play. Like
Yeah.
maybe it won't work. Like maybe it will play
Yeah.
the same every time, and it will become boring. I hope not, because I have all these crazy ideas for scenarios that could happen.
Yeah.
I'm definitely expecting to see this one played. Like
Did
this
you
is a drunk map, but I love it.
did you want to share any of those ideas on how you think it will play out, or do you want to not necessarily give any of that away?
Yeah, like I kind of gave it away already, right? Like I think the idea is you chop through, but what is the timing and how much people will focus on 1v1 against teaming up? It's kind of interesting. Yeah, that's what I'm willing to say about this one.
Do you think it's probably more likely a 2 town center map, so we can get more villagers to then chop through the woods faster, or what's that? Then there's that lumber research. That way you can chop trees down faster. So that way maybe you're not collecting the trees and you're just chopping them down to get them out of the way.
Yeah, definitely forestry, and maybe even like
Yeah.
Mongols have the improved version of forestry. Maybe that could be like you chop with one strike, you can just go through all the woods in a second. Maybe that's an idea. Like there's so many ideas you can play with, and yeah.
Okay, so before, do I want to? Okay, let me open it up. And I got another question for you. I wonder if Mongols would be interesting in here, because let's say if you're a Mongol player, right? You defeat your opponent over here. Well, then you can just move your entire base over.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to rebuild it. You can migrate it into your, the second side. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah.
What civs do you think may be stronger on this map?
Yeah. So one thing I think it's kind of a long distance away, right? Because it's 2v2, 3v3, so the distances are pretty long. I think that for this reason, like you can kind of defend rushes better. It's not because of this map; it's because how team games work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for this reason, like I would say Abbasid could be good on this map. I would say English can definitely be good because you can reach. I think you can reach a late game here, and even if not, I think like Feudal Rush on this map is also kind of viable. Like you can do English just straight onto your enemy, and you have a lot of wood. Like if you put pressure, you can use all this thick wood to keep going with your economy. Yeah, I would say for me, and I'm not a pro player, I would go for Abbasid and English. Yeah, maybe HRE.
And the Mongols,
interesting.
because of what I mentioned, right?
Oh yeah, no, I don't want to give our Mongols away. That's my secret.
I'm in the same boat. I'm not a pro either, you know, and probably map analysis is probably one of my weak points too. So that's why I wanted, invited you on too, just to kind of get that, another level of insight in here.
Yeah, definitely. Like this one map, like I usually have an idea of how a map will be played. I think like on this map, I just know few, like because this map is so different, I know less than any other map, and like I usually kind of try to anticipate what the pros will do. But on this map, I can't wait to see what it's gonna be, and like it's not a, yeah. I usually have a better idea, but this one is so different. So yeah, I can't wait.
And there's another. Did you want to say before I move on from jousting fields? Is there anything else that you want to talk about it or mention about it?
No, I think it's fine. Yeah, I think it's good.
Now, is there just for resources? It looks like there's each player has 2 hunts, 3 berries. Is that accurate?
No, they have 3 hunts.
Oh, 3.
But they don't have a boar.
1, 2, 3. Oh, they don't have a boar. Okay, so 1 extra hunt then, or is it right? Because usually it's 2 per map, right? So it's 1 extra hunt per player.
Yeah.
No boars. What else do they get?
So the extra hunt and no boar. Actually, at the beginning, I wanted to do 2 boars and 1 hunt, but yeah, I don't know. I just played with it, and I think like I want maps with the similar amount of hunt but different, because it makes certain strategies a little bit more viable. For example, professional scouts, which we never see, maybe with 3 deer packs. Like I don't increase the bounty, right? But there are more deer, so you can maybe bring more deer into the TC, and things like professional scouts can become viable on this map. I just want to kind of explore new ideas to use the same bounty, but in a different way. So yeah, I used 3 deers and no boar. And there's only 2 small goals. Usually in the game you get 3, so you only get 2. And the large goals are more towards the middle.
Okay.
And there is another interesting thing about this map where the resources are mirrored between the players, but they are not mirrored in every lane. So every lane is different.
Okay.
But on each lane, it will be mirrored, like, you know what I mean. So like player 1 from team 1 and against player 1 from team 2, they will have the same resource distribution across the lane. Like the gold will be towards the center for both of them on the same distance from the sacred site, for example. But on a different lane, it will be different. But for them, it will be mirrored. So it will be fair between them, but on a different lane, it will be fair, it will be different, but fair between other players, if you get what I mean. Like on one lane, it can be gold towards the middle, and then a different lane, it can be stone towards the middle. So it's kind of like you get a different lane each time, which is part of what you want in a randomly generated map, but it's still fair, which is also something you want in a randomly generated map. So yeah, it was actually pretty tough to make this map not look crafted.
Yep.
Because we always want the generated maps to look kind of, to make the player adjust to the map. So on this map, which is pretty straightforward, it was hard to think about ways to make it RNG based. But yeah, I like the way that each lane is basically its own map.
Yep.
And yeah, I think it's cool.
And it looks like 2 small stones and 1 major stone too?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And I honestly, it's probably a good thing that you didn't do the boar route, right? Because with just having the extra deer and no boar, it kind of opens it up to all civs, or like it includes the Muslim civs, because maybe we want to pick one of the Muslim civs because you can't hunt from the boar, or if someone played a non-Muslim civ, then they could get 2 boars.
Because deers are for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also opens like a few technologies which are underused at the moment.
Like professional scouts, right?
Exactly, yeah. And maybe it's good for the Malians. They can go like, veterans, how is it called? Veteran scouts or scout warriors, and then go professional scouts. It can be like, you can think about a few strategies. So I think it's going to be interesting, to say the least.
And I'm just going to go to, because I do have we could do this map here. This is just a template here for me for my next question, which is for the average person and even like a pro player, how can you use the map to your advantage? And what do I mean by, like, when I see the map layout is, if there's like a forward gold that your opponent has, you can rush, hey, when I build castle, should I build it near gold? Should outpost be on hills, how can you use terrain? How can a player use terrain to their advantage, in games?
Yeah, good question. I think like a pro player would be more fit to answer it than me, but I do make maps. So
Yep.
yeah, like what I try to do when I play. I don't think only about how my map spawns. Like just think about how his map spawns, because it will give you leads about where he will go to. Like if it's a sieve that requires a lot of gold, you can kind of build on the fact that he will try to go for that extra gold, like maybe Malians. You can kind of anticipate him on his gold mine, or French. Like he will eat through his first gold much faster, so you can kind of anticipate the timing where he will go for his second gold. And if you play Mongols, you can kind of try to find this perfect spot for a tower rush and prevent a certain resource that is important for the seal. So yeah, I guess that's true for every map, but some maps kind of allow you to do those things with more advantage. For example, like some maps you start closer to your enemy, so you can kind of make tower rushes even more potent. And some maps are you are a bit more back, so you can kind of look around your own surroundings and exploit them more because you have the time. So yeah, I guess that kind of answers the question. But again, I'm not a pro player. They might say something different. So yeah.
That's why I need to start, because this is one of my weaknesses is using the map to my advantage. I'm just not there yet. There's so many things that you're doing in the game where you almost need to just spend 10 seconds looking at your map and how you can use that to your advantage. You made a good point on hey, checking that when that first gold is almost done, maybe I should click on it, so I can keep an eye on it. And when it's getting close, making sure I put defenses on the second gold to prevent the enemy. And I know that, that might sound, obvious, but I don't know, when I'm in the game, I just get overwhelmed, and you're like, "Oh, I should have did that 3 minutes ago." Well, now it's too late.
Yeah,
they have a castle on it.
So fast. Yeah, I mean everything happens so fast in this game. It's crazy. Like you have to kind of build a muscle memory to just kind of click everything fast enough to be able to think. Because if I just focus on clicking stuff, I forget I need to think as well. So I know what you mean.
Yeah, and I'm actually creating a guide, and it talks a little bit about that. Is removing some of those things that initially you have to think about, moving into like the subconscious or automatic phase of the brain. One of those things would be the build orders. Because if you're focusing too much on your build order, well, then you can't think of your micro, macro, your scouting.
Exactly.
But if you have your build order down packed, you don't even have to think about it. You're just doing it automatically, and then you can focus on other aspects of the game.
Exactly. And yeah, I think that's the reason why people stay with this game for so long. Like I stay with this game, with this franchise for all my life, because there is always this next step you need to learn. Like there is always an extra depth, another thing you can do, another content you can unlock. Because this game is ever developing. It blows my mind. Like this thing, I feel like I have grown along with this game. Like we had the same stages. Like this game was a teenager when I was a teenager, and now I'm a grown man, and this game is a grown man, and I played it. Like when I was a kid, I was playing this game. When I'm an adult, I'm working on this game. It's like this game and me, I feel like we are interconnected, and I feel like so many people have the same experience. And yeah, you can just stay with this game for as long as you like. Because there is always this extra step you can take in this game. Like as you said, after you learn the build order, you can start playing the other. You kind of unlock another layer of this game, because at the beginning you just have to execute the build order. That's the most important part, right? But then after you do that, you kind of have to be more aware on, as you said, on your macro, on your micro, on how you scout. And then after you kind of learn how to do all those three, you kind of have to be more aware about what your opponent is doing, how his map is looking. There is always this extra step you need to take. And once something becomes a muscle memory, you have the other thing you need to be aware about. So it's amazing. I love it.
No, I definitely. And Age of Empires 4, I personally think, and I think a lot of the community does think it's in a really good spot right now.
Yeah.
So, all right. So next thing, question for you. Last question, then we'll move on to that. Is, I know I've seen some criticism on maps, and maybe not just towards you, but maps in general.
Yeah.
When you receive criticism, how do you handle that?
Not all maps are for everyone, and that's okay. Like the pro players will care about how fair the distribution is. Like if the gold is in, like if I have the same gold as my other opponent, if it's as accessible as his, and like more casual players will care how the map plays and can I kind of put what I learned about this game into this map and can I make interesting strategies around this map. And everyone cares about different stuff about every map. So yeah, but for the question about criticism, so I think a criticism is as viable for the map as where this map was put into. So what is the frame this map existed in? So when you put a criticism about a map, it's important to note, was this a tournament map? Was it just a map contest, for example? Like, I think those are handled a bit strangely. Like, it depends, because if there is a map contest right now, is it a map contest for bringing maps to tournaments, or is it a map contest for judging new ideas? Because that makes the criticism completely different. Like, if someone sends me a map and asks me, is this a good map or is this a good design? I say, yeah, it might be, but what is the goal? Like, where do you want this map to go? Do you want this map to be played in FFA's community games? Yeah, it might be great for that, but do you want it to be a tournament map? It's like the pro players will tell you this gold is not in the right position. It's protected by the TC or something, right? So it's very, so the criticism is usually, like, I think one of the maybe issues with taking criticism for a map or maybe making criticism for a map, because I am also making criticism because I also judge maps. And I also have to decide like which maps go to where, like, as part of my job. So so you have to kind of put the map into a situation to be able to judge it, and the criticism is as good as it fits the situation. So a criticism about imbalanced gold is very viable when you're talking about a tournament, and a criticism about this idea is just too similar to Dry Arabia, for example. It's maybe good if the situation is we're trying to make new concepts, right? So you have to put a criticism into perspective, because the criticism probably has value within a situation, but not always. So
definitely understand. Yeah, there's different perspectives, and like you said, competitive versus creativity. And then even in tournaments, do you have to balance between balance in a say, or what's maybe the pro players say versus what's interesting to watch, right?
Definitely.
Interesting for viewers.
Definitely. So obviously I always try to make something that is both interesting and balanced. So let's just take Jousting Fields is a bit more interesting than balanced, probably, but I still took steps to make it more balanced than I wanted to. Like, I could make it more crazy than this. It would have been more crazy than this if it wasn't for a tournament, for example. So you have to kind of think, when you make a map for a tournament, you have to kind of realize, what are the other maps? You're not just making a map, you're making a map within a map pool. Like, okay, they have X amount of water maps. I will not make another water map because they already have enough water maps. So they have too many water maps. Maybe I need to make this map more a water map. And you asked how I approach it, like interesting against balance. So it's not only that, there is this other complete layer of where does this map exist, like within which map pool, because you want to do both. You want to do two things when you create a map for a map pool. You want it to be both balanced, and you want it to be fitting for the map pool, but you also want to make it different. So you want to make it both fitting in sim, but you also want to make it different enough, because you don't want it to be another clone of another map. But you still want it to be different enough, but not too different. So it's always like all these kind of things, and you have to kind of just make imaginary line where you cross the border for every one of these categories. And sometimes they kind of interact well together. Sometimes you can do both and they completely align and they have synergy. and sometimes they don't. Sometimes you have to kind of give up one aspect to get more of the other aspect. And yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely a never-ending part of the process of how you think about maps.
Now, I know you put a lot of passion into these maps. So does criticism ever affect you, like on emotional level? Like, hey, I worked really hard, and then you get this, like, people are like, oh, this map sucks. Like, does that affect you at all, or not really?
Yeah, good question. I guess everyone does. Like, I like if the criticism is just harsh, for no reason.
Yeah.
I kind of I get taken aback.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I take criticism well. Like I never felt bad. Like I don't consider myself like I don't even consider myself the best. As I said, I made more bad maps than anyone, and I also made a lot of good maps. It's fine. Like, and I'm fine with people telling me why the map doesn't work in their opinion, and maybe like, and probably they do have value. Like their opinion has value. They didn't enjoy it. That's a fact, and that's something I want to fix, obviously. But yeah, I also have to consider like what is the map for? Like, yeah, like if a pro player tells me this map is not good for a tournament, but I never made this map for a tournament, I will be, yeah, but it's not made for you. Yeah, that's fine. But if I made it for a tournament and they say, yeah, I don't like this map, then I do take a lot more note and a lot more notice, and I love getting criticism. Like I am so fortunate because I get criticism from pros, I get criticism from developers, I get criticism from casual players and from casters. And yeah, like I met KP at Heidelberg, and he likes shitting on my map, okay?
Who does?
I told him, like, but he does it in such a constructive way. He does it for...
Who is this, Bidderlyn?
What?
Who is?
KP. Killer Pigeon.
Oh, yeah, Killer Pigeon. Okay, yeah.
So he sometimes, he likes talking about, like, what doesn't work about this and that. And, I may sometimes agree with it. I may sometimes don't. Like, it's fine. Like, everyone has opinions. But I love when he does it because he does construct his argument in a way which I completely understand where he is coming from. Like, even if I don't agree, I completely understand where he's coming from. And sometimes he has such a good point. And, like, part of my way to get better in map making is to listen to those criticisms. And yeah, like even if someone says he sucks, I never take it in a negative way because, I will know the maps suck when people will stop saying that because it means they don't care and the map is not worth noting. If someone says the map sucks, they care for either the game or either the map or either the tournament, and that's a good thing. So yeah, go ahead and type this map sucks in the comments. It's good. And yeah, I mean, it also shows some passion because people who don't care don't have a voice.
That's fair.
So yeah, it's good. Like I can take any criticism, and there is some positive to extract from every kind of opinion. Yeah.
Well, Bidderlyn, it's time for you to critique the map I created. I tried doing it in the beta. I was trying to impress you, create something in beta for you to judge, but I didn't have the skills, so I just did a slide. I'll explain it a little bit, and then I want you to go to rate it on balance and creativity. Use those. You maybe give 2 different scores for them. So I'm going to go over to it here. So this is called the Wild West. Like my deer? Those are my hunts. So we got a waterway coming through here in the middle. Opponent 1 starts here. Opponent 2 starts here. I gave each of them a wood line. I gave them a gold. And then these are berries. Or sorry, gold. And these are berries in the back. I think that's pretty standard of maps. And then we have, really the focus is kind of the center where the 2 sacred sites are. We have like these 2 mountains, and then in between the mountains, we have like maybe a major gold mine, and then we got a couple of relics in there, and then we also have one relic, on each of the enemy's side.
Oh, those are relics. Okay.
Yeah, I went in my edit tool. I didn't have a relic, so yeah, those are relics.
Now I know. I just need to know what it is. Yeah, it makes sense. Those are relics. Okay.
These are sacred sites. The bullseye. We have stone here.
How do I know what is small gold and what is big gold?
There is no difference, but I guess whatever standard. This one can be a small, and then this will be a major gold. These will be the major gold.
The one in the mountain is like the one in the center is major.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I can judge this map, I have questions.
Okay, and then just these are stealth forest.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's what those are.
Yeah, I was going to ask where do you put the stealth force? Okay, okay. Yeah, and they kind of generally spawn around these locations, right? They don't necessarily have to, right?
Yeah, it just somewhere in this because I was in my mind I was like, hey, opponent, maybe there could be some walling off, or maybe there's a little fight over, like especially at the once you've used your gold, you got to use this gold, and it's kind of in the halfway point, so we kind of fighting for it,
Yeah.
and maybe opponent's going to wall off both, so.
Let's talk about the river. What is how big is the river? Is it deep? Can you walk over the river? How many? If not, how many fords does it have? Does it have fords?
I think it'll be a river that you could walk across anywhere, but you can have fish.
Oh.
Is that an option? Can be like a shallow water with fish?
Yeah.
Because I don't want it to be where it's a hindrance, but the only impasses I want are the mountains on the side. So it's kind of like mountain pass, but there's like a space in between, and then it having a wider space so people can't necessarily wall it off that easily.
Yeah, it's kind of a mix between mountain pass and the French pass in a way, right? Because you have these middle resources kind of trapped between the mountains.
Yeah.
But you also have like this central.
But you could rush, you don't have to go around the mountains like what French pass I think is what you said, where you'd have to go around the mountains.
Yeah. It's kind of a combination because it's kind of like mountain pass and French pass because you have to go through the middle like mountain pass, but the golds are like the big golds. What's interesting, the beef is in the center, which is cool. Like also the sacred sites are in the center. Yeah, it's a really cool design. So it reminds me kind of like Mongolian Heights because of the river and the mountains. Like it's kind of it takes me back to 3 maps. Like it's kind of somewhere between French Pass to Mountain Pass to Mongolian Heights. Like I see all these 3 maps kind of combined into this idea, which is definitely like a cool combination. Like I could see this becoming like a quick match kind of a map. Like I don't know if it's a ranked map because let's ask like more hard questions. Like the woods near your town centers, like are they protected by the TC? How many small golds do you have? Because I see like only 1 small gold, right?
Yes. Or no, 2. Okay. These 2 are small golds. The only major gold is the one in the mountains.
Right, but like so you don't have 3 small golds. You have 2 small golds next to the TC. But the secondary one is always towards the corner, around the mountain somewhere, right?
Yeah, here, yep, and up there.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I can actually see like a bit like on the rank ladder. What will happen? Like what pros will say about this map is you can tower rush the gold, like the first gold, and then you know where the enemy.
Oh, then you have to go super far for the next one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's like one thing.
Yep. Good point. Good point.
Than that, let's see. So the amount I would increase the amount of berries slightly. I mean, I know it's a defensive.
There's 3 on each side, so you would think there should be an extra berry, 4 berries on each side.
I think because good question. I think maybe it's fine. That's like the common amount, but because the 2 central berries are like very very contested. In a normal map, what happens is you have 3 berries, but they're all kind of on your side. Like you don't have these contested berries. So here you kind of get like 2.5, or like you have to be very aggressive. Like if I would play Abathid on this map, I would go with a town center between the berries, the stone, and the sacred site. Right? Like it's such a sweet spot for
berries, stone. Oh yeah, like maybe right here too, because then you can kind of dip into this deer a little bit, right? Like right here.
Yeah. Like it's such a good position for town center. Yeah, maybe it's a good like. I don't know, like I can't tell if this is a weak map for Abbasid or strong map for Abbasid, because if you make the town center in the middle, you kind of get everything. But I mean, how viable it is, I don't know. Like maybe that's good, right? That I don't know. That's a good sign.
But that's pretty close to the enemy too, so that maybe they'll rush it and destroy it. Because like I said, you can cross the water. You can't wall off this water.
Yeah, I think the central town center like would be a strat actually for any city. Like you get so much resources in the center. Like you can actually get like fish, stone, berries, and sacred sites and maybe deer in one
Yeah.
town center, maybe. Like,
And you kind of cover one of your routes and your gold, if you put it right
yeah,
there.
it
Yeah.
also secures the middle. Like I think, yeah, like the center here is like super important, like even more important than in a mountain pass. But it's also more contested because one important thing, I don't know if you intended for it, but it will be harder to wall because when you spawn so many stuff on the middle, you can only wall, you can't wall
Oh.
over resources, right? So
Yeah.
you will have to wall around it, which would be harder.
Yeah.
So that's also
No,
something
that
to,
was not intended. Of course, on my level, but hey, that's a good point. Which is a good
but
thing, right? I want it to be,
yeah,
difficult to
exactly.
wall off.
It makes it more contested, which
Yeah.
is good. Like it makes the center more like harder to secure. So I think the way to secure the center would be like probably a town center and maybe
Yeah.
a tower. Yeah, it's interesting. I would love to see it played. So yeah, I would definitely say this is an interesting map.
All right. So out of 10 on balance, what would you? Because you did it maybe like a 4 on balance because of the gold. I should have added another gold down here or something.
Yeah, another gold. I wouldn't say 4. Yeah, I would say I would give it a 5 on balance because
Okay.
yeah, exactly. The gold, the stone, only one gold, only one stone. But I mean, you can add another one. It's fine.
Is
Let's
this is it
see.
usually 2 stones? Oh, because you got your town center one and then maybe another one down here or something
Yeah,
that
exactly.
people can
Like
go
another
to.
stone somewhere
Okay.
in your area, basically. Yeah, I think this would be
Because I kind of
okay.
wanted
So
to
balance is
push
kind of hard to
people.
say, right?
Oh,
Sorry,
I
say.
kind of want to push people like I don't want to have too much stone, and if you wanted more stone, you had to really fight in here. So that way, if you wanted to get a keep up or something, but yeah, I could
Yeah,
see it. Maybe if you weren't the first one to get a keep, well, then how do you get your own up? Maybe yeah. So maybe
yeah.
another stone down here. I could
I
see
think
that.
it's interesting because like there is a lot of focus around central control in this map, but putting out walls would be a little harder. I'm not sure how hard. Like I need to spawn it and see if I can actually wall. Like if I can wall, I think it will actually hurt the map because you can if
Boom.
you
Oh
wall
yeah, right.
across the
This, and then
yeah
block your opponent right from all this
yeah, exactly. You
resource.
get
Yeah.
so many more resources because half the resources are in the center. And if you kind of block just over the center, you get like 2/3 of the resources on the map and the sacred sites, which is maybe bad for like balance, right?
Oh.
But yeah, but on a fun scale, like I also like to rate fun. So I would rate it like somewhere between like 7 or 8 because I think it's
Okay.
going to be fun.
Okay.
Yeah, like
Nice.
I do. I will tell you what I consider fun. Like if I begin to fantasize about how I would play it, and I think about different strategies and like what I said earlier. Like, is it viable to put a town center in the middle, or like would I mean I know the middle will be like a focus point on this map, right? Like should I do this or should I do that? So that makes the map more fun, and I also like the creativity around the idea is also like kind of the fun. I think the map looks good. It looks like I think it looks slightly better than like Mountain Pass and French Pass in a way because yeah, it kind of combines them both, but gives another twist, which is yeah, I think it's great. So yeah, I would give 8 for fun.
Hey, I'll
I
take it. I'll
convinced
take
myself.
it. I
Yeah,
just
okay,
threw
let's
down
go.
here. I wanted to get one of the map experts, major map creator judge something that I could throw up real quick. So hey, I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll
I mean,
probably
thank you for showing this map. I mean, you should publish it. I mean, maybe I will publish it for you. If you want to have some.
I'm not trying to give you more work, but yeah, like as far as like I just wanted to throw something up on there that we could discuss.
It's really cool.
Um,
I think like with tweaks because this is not finished and it's fine. Like when we play it, like you will find out more stuff that you can change and maybe like a certain play style will become too good and like you have to kind of play it and generate it. It's kind of hard to know just from a blueprint. But yeah, like this has potential. Like with tweaks, it can be like balanced and fun and yeah,
That's
it can be
good.
both.
That's good to hear. Well, Bidderlyn, I appreciate you coming on here. Great discussions.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
I'm excited to see your map, the jousting fields, during the winter team championships. I'm excited to see the teams play. It'll be interesting to see how people play it. So I really do appreciate, and when I post this, I'm sure the community not only appreciates you making these maps, but also appreciate you coming on here and providing your perspective, insight, and yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was so fun being here, and yeah, like it's the first time I'm doing this sort of stuff, and yeah, you've been super gracious, and you made it feel like natural for me. I was a bit nervous, but like not anymore. I mean, it's been a blast, and yeah, it was great.